The prison yard fell silent the moment the gates clanged shut. A newcomer stood there, tall, calm, his eyes unreadable under the bruised sky. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Fresh meat." Another laughed, "He won't last a week." But when the biggest bully stepped forward, swinging his fists for show, the stranger caught his hand midair without looking and said, "You really don't want to do this." What happened next shocked everyone and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me. This is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you find this story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. The air inside Grayford State Prison felt heavier than stone, carrying the scent of rust, sweat, and hopelessness. Inmate footsteps echoed like chains of regret across the corridor as the new arrival, Darius Cole, was led past iron bars and hostile stares. His expression stayed unreadable, too calm for someone stepping into hell. Beneath his stillness lay a pulse of discipline, a silence trained by years of combat. He said nothing when a guard shoved him, didn't flinch when a prisoner muttered a threat. Darius just looked once, steady, cold, and the corridor went quiet, as if even the walls recognized danger. The first night in Grayford passed without incident, but calm never lasted long in that place. By morning, the prison's rhythm began. Metal doors clanging open, shouts bouncing off the concrete walls, and the thick smell of burnt oatmeal seeping through the air. Darius Cole moved quietly through it all, eyes sharp, steps measured. He'd been in worse cages before. To him, this was just another battlefield, one with invisible lines and unseen enemies. Inmates watched him. Some whispered. Others laughed. Grayford was ruled by dominance, and newcomers were tested fast. Darius ate alone at the far corner of the cafeteria, ignoring the noise until a shadow blocked his tray. The man standing over him was Rick Mason, the self-proclaimed king of Cell Block C, a man whose fists had rewritten many faces. Tattoos marked his arms like trophies, each symbol a scar of conquest. "You sitting in my spot," Rick said, voice low but carrying enough weight to silence nearby tables. Darius didn't look up, then find another. The laughter that followed wasn't friendly. Even the guards glanced over. Mason leaned closer, his breath heavy with tobacco and arrogance. "You don't talk to me like that, rookie. You hear me?" Darius finally met his eyes. "Calm. Steady. You'll get your answer when you move." Something in that stillness made Mason hesitate. Not fear, not yet, but unease. He slammed his hand on the table and walked away muttering, "We'll see how long that mouth lasts." The cafeteria noise resumed, but the moment had marked something deeper. Everyone saw it. Lines were drawn. Later that afternoon, Darius was assigned to the laundry block. Machines roared like beasts, steam rising through cracked pipes. He worked silently, folding sheets with the precision of a soldier cleaning a weapon. Every move was deliberate. Every sound was catalogued. When he caught a glimpse of a guard staring at him longer than necessary, his instincts stirred. Something was off. That night, he lay awake on his bunk while his cellmate, Eddie, whispered stories of Grayford's undercurrents, the gambling, the drug routes, the unspoken deals between guards and inmates. "Mason runs it all," Eddie said, voice trembling. "But lately, someone's been messing with the shipments. He's looking for a scapegoat." Darius said nothing, though the implication was clear. Someone had already decided who'd take the fall. The next morning, a fight erupted in the yard. Two men clawed at each other until one fell bleeding on the gravel. Darius stood among the crowd, unmoved. His eyes weren't on the fight. They were on Mason, who stood at the edge watching him. It wasn't a challenge anymore. It was an invitation. When roll call ended, Darius was summoned to the warden's office. The room smelled of stale coffee and paperwork. Warden Harris, a man with a permanent scowl, leaned back in his chair. "You've been here 2 days, Cole. I've already got reports about you." "I haven't done..." Anything, Darius replied. That's what worries me, the warden said. Men like you don't stay quiet for long. He slid a file across the desk. You were a professional fighter once. Undefeated record. Then you disappeared. Darius's gaze didn't waver. That was another life. Maybe, but men don't change that much. Not here. Harris's tone softened, but there was something rehearsed about it. Stay out of trouble, and you'll make it through your sentence alive. Step into the wrong fight, and I won't save you. Darius left without replying, but as the heavy door closed behind him, he caught sight of a small note folded under his cell key. Someone's coming for you tonight. No signature, just those words in sharp, deliberate handwriting. By evening, Grayford's power grid flickered. A blackout hit the east wing, the lights pulsing twice before dying completely. Guards shouted orders. In the dark, boots scraped against concrete, multiple pairs, moving fast. Darius sat upright, muscles tensed, hearing whispers approach. The cell door creaked open. 3 figures slipped inside. A blade caught the dim emergency light. Mason's voice, low and satisfied. I told you we'd finish that talk. The first man lunged. Darius sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. A knee strike followed, sending another man crashing into the wall. Mason swung a metal pipe, connecting with Darius's shoulder, but it barely slowed him. Years of cage fighting had forged his reflexes beyond pain. In a blur, Mason was on the ground, gasping, as Darius's arm locked around his throat. Who sent you? Darius demanded. Mason's voice cracked. It wasn't me, it was the guards. They wanted... The lights snapped back on. Sirens blared. Guards flooded the block, weapons raised. Darius dropped Mason, instantly hands lifted, but the sight was already enough. 3 men down, blood on the floor, Darius standing over them like a predator. Cole, down. He obeyed, silent, face unreadable. Hours later, in solitary confinement, he replayed Mason's last words. The guards wanted, what? A fight? A reason? A setup? The note, the timing, the blackout. It was too neat to be a coincidence. Someone in authority had orchestrated this. Through the slit in the door, he saw movement, a guard leaving something on the floor, a meal tray. But when the footsteps faded, Darius noticed the corner of another folded paper beneath it. He pulled it out carefully. You were never meant to survive this place. Keep your eyes open. No signature, just the faint scent of perfume on the page, an odd detail in a men's prison. The message confirmed what Darius already suspected. Grayford wasn't a prisoner. It was a stage. Someone was watching, pulling strings, and they'd just made their first move. He leaned back against the cold wall, eyes open, heartbeat steady. The walls hummed faintly with the generator's return. Outside, faint voices argued in the hall, guards whispering about transfers, about money changing hands. He listened, memorizing every sound. Then came something unexpected, a soft, almost human laugh echoing from the next cell over. You're not what you seem, are you, new guy? The voice said. Darius turned toward the darkness. Neither are you. The voice chuckled. They call me Father Paul. I used to be a preacher before I got here. I've seen plenty of killers. You're different. Darius didn't answer, but his silence carried weight. Father Paul continued, word of advice, son. In Grayford, the enemy doesn't always wear a uniform. Darius closed his eyes, letting the word sink in. He didn't yet know who had set him up or why, but one truth had already surfaced. The real fight hadn't even begun, and when it did, Grayford would remember his name. Grayford's days blended into one another. Steel doors, bitter coffee, the rhythm of control. Yet beneath that order, tension swelled like pressure in a sealed pipe. After the attack, Darius Cole had become a myth among inmates. Some called him Ghost, others Death in Chains. He didn't react to any of it. Silence was his armor. But even armor cracks when a mind begins to stir. In the yard, he moved alone. His shoulder still ached from the pipe strike, though he never showed it. Across the yard, Mason sat with his crew, bruised but alive, his pride wounded more than his body. The humiliation had spread through the blocks like wildfire. No one had ever put Mason down like that. It wasn't over. Father Paul often watched from a bench near the chapel doors, eyes tired, hands clasped. He'd taken a strange interest in Darius since the night in solitary. Their first real conversation came 3 days later during morning prayers. "You don't strike me as a man looking for salvation," the priest said quietly. "I'm not," Darius replied without looking up. "I'm looking for answers." Paul nodded slowly. Sometimes they're the same thing. That line lingered longer than Darius wanted it to. For years, fighting had been his language. Pain had been his faith. Now inside these walls, every quiet moment threatened to expose what the violence had buried. He found himself thinking about the letter, the one that warned him. The handwriting had been too clean, too deliberate. A woman's hand, maybe. He replayed Mason's panicked words again and again. The guards wanted. What? To break him? To study him? Later that week, he was reassigned to the prison gym. Ironic, considering his background. The place was mostly rusted equipment and cracked mirrors, but it was where men went to remember their pride. Darius lifted quietly in the corner, mind fixed. A guard named Officer Trent leaned against the wall, watching him too long. When Darius finally looked up, Trent smirked. "Didn't think a legend like you would end up folding laundry," he said. "Legends don't last," Darius replied. Trent chuckled. "You might, if you play smart." Something in his tone carried a threat disguised as advice. Darius recognized it. Power always spoke like that, soft, taunting, calculated. That night, he found Father Paul waiting near the chapel again. The priest's eyes held fatigue, but also something else, a secret. "Why are you really here, Paul?" Darius asked. Paul hesitated before answering. "I killed a man who trusted me. I thought I could save him. I was wrong." There was no drama in his voice, just a quiet confession. Darius studied him, sensing the truth buried in the simplicity. "I've seen men kill for less guilt than that," Darius said. Paul looked up. "And you? What ghosts brought you here?" Darius didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was enough. The next morning, Mason approached him in the yard with a forced grin. "Heard you got lucky that night," he said. "Lights go out. You get the upper hand. Funny how that works." "You calling it luck?" Darius asked, calm as ever. "Call it what you want. But the guards ain't done with you, champ. They don't like fighters they can't control. Then maybe they should stop testing me." Mason leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't get it. You're in the middle of something bigger. They're moving people. Money. Favors. You messed that up." That night, Darius lay awake again. The pattern was forming. A rigged system, corruption in uniform, and someone outside those walls who wanted him silenced. His instinct screamed there was more, something that reached beyond Grayford itself. The following week, he was called to meet with Dr. Evelyn Hart, the prison psychologist. Her office was small, filled with plants that had somehow survived the stale air. She regarded him calmly, pen poised above a clipboard. "You've been in 5 altercations since you arrived," she said, "but none were instigated by you. That's unusual." "Not if you know how to listen before you strike," Darius said. Her eyes flickered with curiosity. "You were a fighter once. You understand control." He leaned back slightly. "Control's just another form of survival." She smiled faintly. "And yet, survival isn't living. Why are you really here, Mr. Cole?" He didn't answer. Her tone wasn't probing like the warden's. It was almost personal, like she knew something. She continued, "I read your file. You didn't just fight. You disappeared after your last title match. No record, no contact, nothing for 3 years. That's not normal for someone with your fame." His silence stretched long enough to make her uneasy. "Everyone disappears eventually," he said. Finally, Some of us just do it on purpose. When their session ended, she watched him leave, her expression unreadable, but as the door shut, she whispered, "They're watching him too closely." Darius didn't hear that part, but someone else did, Officer Trent, standing just outside the hallway. Over the next few days, the atmosphere shifted. Guards began showing up at odd hours, checking his cell more than usual. Eddie, his cellmate, grew nervous. "They're setting you up, man," Eddie muttered one night. "Trent's been talking to Mason. That's not normal." "Neither is fear," Darius said. Eddie looked away. "You don't get it. This place eats people who don't play along." Then let it choke. Despite his calm, Darius felt something tightening inside, a slow, deliberate trap forming around him. He began observing more, speaking less. Every look from Trent, every word from Mason, every small gesture from Dr. Hart started forming patterns. Then came an unexpected shift. Dr. Hart called him in again. But this time, her tone had changed. She looked worried. "Something's going on, Darius," she said quietly. "The administration is moving files, yours included. There are sealed orders I don't have access to." "Why? Tell me." "Because I think they're planning a transfer that's not on record. You won't survive it." He studied her carefully. "Why help me?" For a moment, she hesitated. "Because my brother was in a place like this once. He never made it out. I won't let them do that again." Her voice trembled slightly, honest or a performance. Darius couldn't tell, but her warning matched his instincts. Someone wanted him gone quietly. That night, a new note appeared under his pillow. "You shouldn't trust the doctor. She's one of them." No signature. Same handwriting. He burned the note against the cell light, watching the paper curl into ash. The next day, Father Paul found him again during yard time. "You're carrying too much, son," he said softly. "I'm carrying what's mine," Darius replied. Paul looked uneasy. "Whatever you think you're fighting, it's not just men. It's the kind of sin that hides behind uniforms and prayers." Something in his tone was off. Darius caught it instantly, the slight quiver, the fear behind the calm. "Who's forcing you to talk, Paul?" Paul's eyes darted toward the watchtower. "They're listening," he whispered. "They always are." Darius turned slightly, scanning the fence. A guard stood there, Trent, smirking faintly, radio pressed to his shoulder. That moment cemented what Darius already suspected. Paul wasn't free, Hart wasn't safe, and Mason wasn't the real threat. The walls themselves were part of a design, a controlled environment built not to contain men, but to break them. When night came, Darius sat on his bunk, staring at the cracked ceiling. Beneath the silence, he felt something awaken, the same cold discipline that had made him unbeatable in the cage. But this fight wasn't about titles. It was survival against an enemy that thrived on control, deceit, and hidden motives. He whispered to himself, voice barely audible, if they wanted a monster, they built one. And for the first time since arriving, Darius allowed himself to feel what he had long suppressed. Not rage, not fear, but purpose. A storm hit Grayford that night, thunder rolling through the hills, rain hammering the walls like nature wanted in. Power flickered again, and for a heartbeat, the entire prison drowned in darkness. When the lights returned, everything looked slightly altered, like the world had exhaled and reset itself into something more dangerous. At dawn, Darius Cole was taken from his cell without warning. 2 guards, Trent and another named Harlan, escorted him down the lower corridors toward the basement level, a place most inmates didn't know existed. "Routine inspection," Trent said casually, though his smirk betrayed something else. They stopped before a rusted metal door secured with an electronic lock. Harlan swiped a keycard, and the door opened into a room that smelled of bleach and fear. It wasn't an inspection area. It was an interrogation chamber. "Sit," Trent ordered. Darius didn't move. "You can drop the act." Trent smiled faintly. "Still think you're in control, champ?" Darius's silence answered for him. Harlan stepped closer, baton in hand. but Trent raised a finger. Not yet. He's valuable. From behind a partition, Warden Harris appeared. His tie was loose, his eyes sleepless. "Mr. Cole," he said, tone formal, detached, "you've caused quite a ripple. 3 inmates were hospitalized, 1 transfer halted, and now my staff are questioning orders. You're not just surviving, you're disrupting." "Maybe the system's already broken," Darius said. Harris gave a humorless laugh. "This system runs on men like you. Fighters. Controlled violence. You think we let your kind in by accident?" Darius frowned slightly, not understanding. Harris continued. "Grayford isn't just a correctional facility. It's a program funded, monitored, and recorded. Select inmates are evaluated for recruitment." Trent leaned forward. "You're on camera, Cole. Every step, every fight, every silence, it's all data." The words hit harder than the walls ever could. Darius realized then that he'd been baited from the moment he arrived. The blackout, the attack, even Mason, it had all been staged to test his reactions. "Recruitment for what?" he asked quietly. Harris folded his arms. "Private security contracts. Off-the-record operations. Governments pay for loyalty, we breed it." "So, Grayford's not a prison," Darius said. "It's a factory." "Exactly," Harris said. "And you're the best product we've had in years." Trent walked closer, eyes glinting with arrogance. "You could be out of here tomorrow if you sign on. Or you can rot like the rest." Darius met his gaze evenly. "You think I fight for anyone's leash?" Trent's smile vanished. He struck without warning, a baton across Darius's jaw. The impact barely made Darius flinch. He spat blood, then grinned faintly. "That's all you got?" Trent swung again. Darius caught the baton midair, twisted his wrist, and dropped him with a knee to the ribs. Harlan lunged forward. But Darius turned the baton in one smooth motion and leveled him too, before either could call for backup. Harris didn't move. He simply watched, almost impressed. "You see? That control. That efficiency. You can't hide what you are, Cole. You were made for this." "I wasn't made," Darius said, stepping closer. "You built this." Before Harris could answer, alarms blared. Red lights pulsed across the walls. A voice came through the intercom. "Lockdown. Block C breach. Inmate riot in progress." The warden's composure cracked for the first time. "What the hell?" He turned toward the monitors. The feed showed chaos. Fires in the yard, guards fighting back. Darius's eyes caught a familiar face on one of the screens. Mason leading the charge. Trent groaned on the floor, clutching his ribs. He's not supposed to. But Darius already understood. Mason's attack wasn't random. Someone had released him. Someone with clearance. Amid the confusion, the main door swung open, and standing there, soaked from the storm, was Dr. Evelyn Hart. Her expression was sharp, purposeful. "They're coming for him," she said, pointing to Darius. "You need to move now." Harris looked startled. "You shouldn't be here." Hart ignored him. "The system's compromised. Someone inside triggered the riot as cover to remove Cole permanently." "Who?" Harris demanded. She hesitated, eyes flickering toward Trent. "Him." Trent froze, then smirked through his pain. "Nice try. Document tell him who really signs your paycheck." Darius's eyes narrowed. "What does he mean?" Hart's voice trembled. "They brought me in to study behavioral control, emotional triggers under confinement. I thought it was for rehabilitation. Then I saw your file." Darius stared at her, realization slowly dawning. "You were part of it." "I didn't know what they were doing," she said quickly. "They needed someone to monitor your responses, your restraint, your violence, your adaptability. You were their experiment." Trent laughed bitterly. "And she's damn good at it. Every session you had with her? Recorded. Every question she asked? Scripted." The betrayal landed like a physical blow. Darius's breath slowed, but his eyes grew sharper, colder. Harris barked orders over the radio. "Contain the riot. Secure the lower level." But no one responded. The monitors flickered to static. Dr. Hart stepped closer to Darius. Listen to me. Whatever they planned, it's gone wrong. They want you dead now. I can get you out, but you have to trust me. Darius didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted to the monitors again. Mason and his men were tearing through the gates. Fires burned behind them. The chaos was spreading, precisely timed, perfectly orchestrated. This isn't a riot, Darius muttered. It's a cleanup. Hart swallowed hard. Then we don't have time. Trent tried to rise, but Darius kicked the baton away and pressed a boot to his chest. You said I'm a product, he said coldly. Let's see if I can break the machine. He struck once, hard enough to knock Trent unconscious. They moved fast through the lower corridors, alarms screaming. Hart led him through a maintenance tunnel, water dripping from overhead pipes. There's an emergency exit that leads to the storage lot. If we make it there, I can call an outside contact. Your contact part of this too? Her voice cracked. Not everyone here is dirty. When they reached the final gate, Hart stopped to enter a code. Her hands trembled. It's jammed, she whispered. Footsteps echoed behind them, 2 guards, weapons drawn. Darius grabbed the nearest wrench and moved without hesitation. The fight was short, brutal, and silent. When the last guard fell, Hart just stared wide-eyed. You don't hesitate, she said quietly. Neither do they, Darius replied. The gate finally clicked open. Rain poured in sheets outside. They stepped into the storm, the cold air cutting through the heat of adrenaline. Then Hart stopped him. There's something else you need to know. Darius turned. Her expression was torn between guilt and desperation. You weren't supposed to be here, she said. The transfer order that sent you to Grayford, it was forged. His eyes narrowed. By who? She hesitated too long. By me. The world seemed to still for a moment, rain hissing against the concrete. I thought I could protect you, she said quickly. They were planning to have you killed before trial. I moved you here because I thought it was safer. But they found out. They turned it into this. Darius stared at her, the betrayal twisting like a knife. Every session, every word, every glance, now reframed under a different light. You used me, he said quietly. I saved you, she pleaded. It's not the same. Lightning flashed, illuminating her tear-streaked face. Darius's silence stretched between them, long and heavy. Then, distant gunfire echoed from the yard. The chaos was closing in. He finally said, You made one mistake, Doctor. Her breath caught. What? You thought the cage defined me. He turned toward the storm, rain slicing across his face, and walked forward into the chaos as sirens wailed behind him. Hart stood frozen, realization dawning that she hadn't saved a man. She had unleashed something far worse, something no system could contain. And somewhere deep in the command center, a new monitor flickered to life. Darius Cole, Camera 07, labeled Subject Reassessment. Phase 2 initiated. Rain fell like broken glass, slicing through the smoke that curled from the prison yard. Grayford was burning, sirens blaring, flames licking the sky, and gunshots echoing from the towers. In the chaos, Darius Cole moved like shadow and intent. Every motion was deliberate, silent, his instincts cutting through the noise. He didn't run. He hunted. Dr. Evelyn Hart followed close behind, soaked, trembling, her breath uneven. The storm masked their escape, but it also made every movement dangerous. Floodlights swept across the perimeter, guards shouting orders into radios that no longer worked. Somewhere deep inside, alarm still screamed, a mechanical heartbeat for a dying institution. Darius, she gasped, catching up as he stopped beneath a drainage bridge. We can't stay out here. They'll shoot on sight. He didn't look at her. His eyes tracked the tower lights, calculating. Then we don't give him the chance. Hart's voice cracked. You think you can fight your way out of a federal prison in the middle of a lockdown? He turned, rain running down his scarred face. I don't think so. I adapt. She saw something in his eyes then. Not anger, not fear, but focus so absolute it was almost inhuman. The same look she'd seen in his fight tapes years ago, before he disappeared from a ring. Only now there were no crowds, no cameras, just survival. They crossed the outer yard, stepping over fallen bodies, guards and inmates alike. The riot had turned into slaughter. The men who'd released Mason's crew were shooting indiscriminately. Darius recognized precision when he saw it. "They're professionals," he muttered, "not inmates." Hart followed his gaze. The shooters moved like soldiers, not convicts. "They're cleaning up loose ends," she said under breath. "Then we're next." He led her toward the industrial wing, where smoke billowed from shattered windows. Inside, machines hummed faintly under flickering lights. Darius picked up a piece of rebar from the floor, balanced, waited. He always needed something in his hands. Hart's hand trembled as she reached into her coat and produced a flash drive. This has everything. The experiment records, your sessions, the internal memos. I copied it last week. If we can get this out, you think they'll let us?" Darius said, "No, but we can try." For the first time, she saw something human flash in his eyes, a small, reluctant flicker of trust. He took the drive, pocketed it, and nodded once. They moved deeper into the industrial hall, the sound of boots closing in from behind. Darius stopped suddenly, signaling her to hide behind a metal crate. The team of armed men entered moments later, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Targets on the move. One of them whispered into a headset. Cole and the psychologist confirmed. Darius motioned for Hart to stay low. His pulse slowed. Timing was everything. When the nearest man passed, Darius struck. Swift, silent, devastating. A chokehold, a twist, a fall. Before the others could react, the lights went out again, plunging the room into shadow. Gunfire erupted. Sparks flared as bullets tore through metal. Hart covered her ears, crouching as chaos exploded around her. When it ended, the only sound left was rain dripping through the ceiling and Darius's steady breathing. "You killed them," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They chose their side." She stared at him, realizing he didn't hesitate, ever. There was no remorse in him, just grim efficiency. The man she'd studied in files was gone. What stood before her was something sharpened by survival and betrayal. They continued through a maintenance tunnel, low and narrow, the sound of the riot fading behind them. The tunnel smelled of oil and rust. Darius's shoulder brushed the damp walls as he led, one hand steady on the rebar. Hart's voice broke the silence. "Why did you disappear after your last fight?" He didn't answer at first. "Because I killed a man." She flinched at the bluntness. "In a ring?" He nodded once. "They called it an accident. But I knew the truth. I crossed the line. After that, I didn't fight for money anymore. I fought because I didn't know how to stop." His words carried no self-pity, only the exhaustion of memory. "Why tell me that now?" she asked softly. He stopped walking. "Because you need to know what kind of man you're running with." Before she could respond, a voice echoed from the far end of the tunnel. "You always did like the dark, Cole." Mason stepped out from the shadows, his face scarred and bloodied, but his grin intact. Two men flanked him, both armed with shivs. "You think I'd let you walk away after what you did to me?" Mason said. Darius didn't blink. "You should have stayed down." Mason laughed, a hollow sound. "And missed this? Nah. See, I know things too. I know why you're here. They told me about you. You're their prototype, man. You're not even a prisoner. You're property." Hart froze. "He's lying." "Am I?" Mason sneered. "You really think they'd put a world champion in Grayford for nothing? You're part of their experiment document. You think you're saving him? You're finishing the job." Darius's grip on the rebar tightened. "You talk too much." Mason's smirk widened. "Go ahead, kill me. That's what they want. Every time you lose control, every time you spill blood, they're watching. You're proving them right." For the first time, Darius hesitated. Mason saw it. See, you feel it, don't you? Mason said, that itch in your head? That voice that tells you you're just a weapon they trained too well. Hart stepped forward. Don't listen to him. But Mason pressed on, his words cutting deep. You think she's different? She was in on it. Hell, maybe she still is. You don't think she's been reporting every move you make? You don't think she knew they'd come for you tonight? Darius looked at her then, his expression unreadable. Is he right? Hart's lips trembled. I told you, I didn't know what they planned. That's not what I asked. Her silence lasted a second too long. Mason's grin widened. There it is. Something inside Darius cracked, quietly, invisibly. Not rage, but disappointment colder than violence. He turned to Mason. You should have run. The fight was short, vicious, and final. When it ended, Mason lay crumpled on the floor, his throat bleeding out into the grime. Darius dropped the rebar, chest heaving. Hart stared, horrified and guilt-ridden. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. His tone was flat. He was never going to stop. For a long moment, only rain echoed through the tunnel grates. When Darius finally looked up, there was something broken in his eyes. He was right about one thing, he said. They built me to fight, and now I can't stop. Hart took a step closer. You're not what they made you. You're what you choose to be. Her words hung in the air like a lifeline, fragile and trembling. Darius turned away. Choice is an illusion in cages like these. They emerged from the tunnel into the storm again. Beyond the fences, faint lights shimmered in the valley. The highway, freedom, something almost within reach. But the searchlights behind them grew brighter, closing in. Helicopters thudded overhead. Hart's voice broke. If we don't go now, it's over. Darius looked back at the inferno of Grayford. Flames climbed the watchtowers, reflecting off the rain. For a second, he saw every fighter he'd ever beaten, every man he'd destroyed, and realized he was no different from them. Just another weapon discarded when the fight ended. He turned to her, voice low. If we get out, this doesn't end. They'll come for us again. Then let them, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. This time, we fight on our terms. For the first time, Darius almost smiled, but beneath it, something darker stirred. A growing awareness that he couldn't outrun what they'd made him. The storm, the fire, the blood, all of it mirrored what was happening inside him. As they ran toward the outer fence, alarms screamed anew. The world had become noise and motion, chaos and purpose intertwined. Darius Cole had escaped cages before, but never the one built inside his mind. Lightning fractured the night like veins of burning glass across the black sky. The storm had not stopped, it had only grown angrier. Darius Cole and Dr. Evelyn Hart stood at the edge of the industrial valley, staring up at the concrete facility that loomed over the horizon. The Asterian Research Complex, the real prison behind Grayford's facade. Grayford was only a front. The experiments, the files, the truth, it all lived here. Rain ran down Darius's face as the truth settled in like a blade. Every fight, every manipulation, every person who'd helped him survive was part of the same design. Hart's trembling hand reached for the pistol she'd stolen from a guard. Once we get the data out, she said through chattering teeth, we expose everything. The Senate hearings, the media, someone will listen. Darius didn't answer. His gaze stayed fixed on the floodlights circling the complex perimeter. He wasn't thinking of exposure. He was thinking of reckoning. Inside, the corridors gleamed sterile under cold white light. Glass panels reflected his every movement. His reflection split into dozens of identical fragments, each one showing a different face of the man he used to be. Fighters, prisoners, killers, subjects. He didn't know which version of him was walking now. Hart's voice whispered behind him. Once we reach the central lab, He raised a hand, silencing her. From deeper in the corridor came a sound, metal shifting, slow and deliberate. Then a voice, calm and precise, echoed through the intercom. "Welcome back, Subject 7. Hart froze. "That voice." "Dr. Marcus Van," Darius muttered, his tone sharpening. "The architect of Asterion. The man who had disappeared years ago, the one Hart thought had been killed in an explosion." The intercom crackled again. "You shouldn't have come back, Evelyn. You were never built for this kind of guilt." Her knees weakened. "He's alive." Darius's fists tightened. "Then this ends now." They entered the main lab, a cathedral of glass and light. In the center stood a circular platform surrounded by computers, cables, and containment chambers filled with shadowy forms suspended in chemical fluid. Darius stepped closer, realizing each one contained a human body, some alive, some half-dissolved, all twisted echoes of himself. Hart's hand clamped over her mouth. "My God, Darius, these are versions of me," he said flatly. "Every failure they buried." Monitors flickered to life, and Dr. Ven's face appeared on the largest screen. Older, colder, and entirely unrepentant. "You were always the most promising one, Cole. The perfect synthesis of aggression and restraint. But I had to see if the human mind could hold the enhancements. The others broke." Darius's voice cut through the static. "And you called it science." Ven smiled faintly. "I called it progress." Hart stepped forward, anger overtaking fear. "You used human beings as test subjects. Soldiers, prisoners, men who trusted you." "They trusted no one," Ven replied. "That's why they were ideal." His eyes turned to Darius. "You should thank me. Without me, you'd still be nothing but a washed-up fighter drowning in guilt." Darius's silence was heavier than words. His eyes burned not with rage, but with clarity. "You made me a monster," he said quietly, "but you forgot monsters learn to bite back." Ven chuckled. "Still dramatic, still predictable. You think killing me will change anything? You're the proof of concept now. Even if you destroy this place, the design lives on in you." Hart's hand shook as she aimed the gun at the screen. "Then we finish the design." But before she could fire, the containment pods hissed open. The room is filled with mist, thick and chemical. Figures emerged. 4 men, bare-chested, their bodies marked with the same scars as Darius's. Their eyes glowed faintly blue. The prototypes had been waiting. Ven's voice dripped from the speakers. "Evolution always resists extinction." The fight began like an explosion. Darius moved first, his instincts firing before thought. The first clone lunged, strength inhuman, but Darius sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, and broke it in one fluid motion. Hart ducked behind a console as glass shattered overhead. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The second prototype came from behind, grabbing Darius by the throat and slamming him into the reinforced wall. Darius retaliated with a headbutt, cracking bone, followed by 3 short, brutal strikes to the ribs. The air filled with the dull percussion of flesh-meeting force. But they were faster than him, almost synchronized, fighting like echoes of his own muscle memory. Every move he made, they mirrored with precision. He was fighting himself, his past, his mistakes, his rage. Hart crawled toward the main terminal, typing furiously. "I can trigger a meltdown," she shouted. "It'll wipe the data and overload the containment." "Do it." Darius grunted, ducking under a swing. One of the clones seized him from behind, pulling him into a chokehold. Darius's vision blurred for an instant, but then he saw something, a reflection in the glass floor beneath him. His clone's eyes filled with fear, not rage. These weren't soldiers. They were victims, too. Controlled, conditioned, disposable. He stopped resisting for a fraction of a second, and then reversed the hold, snapping the man's neck cleanly, not out of anger, but mercy. 2 more came at him. The fight was chaos, pure kinetic violence. Darius's body bled and trembled, but his movements stayed sharp. For every hit he took, he returned 2. His reflection shattered across the lab's mirrored walls until it seemed he was surrounded by ghosts. Finally, silence. The last clone fell. Darius stood shaking, drenched in blood and rain, barely holding himself upright. Hart's voice broke through the smoke. The system's primed. Once I hit this key, everything goes up. Then Ven's voice returned, closer this time. You can't destroy what you don't understand. He stepped out from behind a glass partition, alive, real. The scar down his face gleamed under the emergency light. He held a pistol, aimed squarely at Hart. Darius's body tensed, but Ven's smirk stopped him cold. You think she's innocent? She built the neural sink. She signed the authorization for every experiment, every enhancement. Without her, you'd still be just a man who was killed in the ring. Hart froze. I didn't know what they'd do with it, she whispered. You knew enough, Ven hissed. Darius looked between them, between the man who had made him and the woman who had tried to save him. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. Hart's voice trembled. I was trying to fix it, Darius. I thought I could undo what we'd done. By lying me? His voice was low, dangerous. Ven's smirk widened. There it is. The truth always breaks its cage. Darius stepped forward. You're wrong, he said. It frees it. He moved faster than Ven could aim. One strike, two. The gun clattered across the floor. Darius pinned him against the console, his forearm pressed to the man's throat. Every life you broke, he growled, ends with you. Ven choked, eyes bulging. You can't stop evolution. Darius's voice dropped to a whisper. Then I'll reset it. He let go. Ven collapsed, gasping. Hart slammed the final key. The siren screamed as the lab's lights turned crimson. Containment alarms blared. Meltdown initiated. Darius, she shouted, we have to go. But he didn't move. His eyes were on the rows of chambers, on the faces frozen in the tanks. No, he said. It ends here. She grabbed his arm. If you stay, you die. He looked at her, really looked, for the first time without suspicion. Then maybe that's the price. The floor trembled. Explosions tore through the walls. Hart's tears mixed with rain as she backed toward the exit. Please, Darius, don't make me go. She hesitated, then turned and ran as the lab erupted in flame. Darius stood in the inferno, the heat searing his skin. One by one, the containment tanks burst, the light washing over him like absolution. He looked at the reflection in the glass, one final image of himself, and felt for the first time peace. When the explosion consumed the complex, the valley lit up brighter than day. Hours later, rescue teams found the wreckage. Among the ruins, they found no trace of Darius Cole. Only melted steel, shattered glass, and one untouched object, a flash drive, burned but intact. In the government briefing room days later, Dr. Evelyn Hart slid that drive across a table of officials. Her eyes were hollow but steady. This is the truth, she said, and it cost him everything. The lights dimmed. Screens flickered to life. Darius Cole appeared in archived footage, fighting, bleeding, surviving. His voice, recorded long before the fire, played over the speakers. You can cage a man's body, he said, but once he learns the truth, his soul will burn through walls. And then the screen went black. Rain whispered across the charred ruins of the Asterian complex. The valley that once pulsed with humming machines now lay silent, smothered in ash and smoke. From the ridge above, the world looked drained of color, gray earth, pale sky, a landscape stripped clean of lies. Dr. Evelyn Hart stood there, wrapped in a black coat that flapped in the wind. Her eyes were fixed on the crater below. Weeks had passed since the explosion, yet every night she dreamed of him, Darius Cole standing in that inferno, unflinching, as if he had already accepted his fate long before the fire reached him. The government had sealed everything. The official report called it an industrial failure. No mention of experiments, no word about human trials. The files were lost in the blast, though Evelyn knew better. truth didn't vanish, it was buried. And she had buried part of it herself. She closed her hand around a small, scorched metal tag in her pocket. Darius's identification plate from Grayford. It was all they'd recovered from him. The name was almost unreadable, but she didn't need to see it to remember. She turned as footsteps approached. It was Agent Ross, the federal investigator assigned to her case. Clean suit, tired eyes, a man who'd seen too much and believed too little. "Dr. Hart," he said, stopping beside her. "You shouldn't be here. The site's unstable." "So am I," she murmured. Ross studied the crater, his expression unreadable. "We found something in the southern wing. A body. DNA match, Marcus Venn." She exhaled slowly. "Then it's over." "Is it?" he asked. "Because the data from that drive you gave us, only part of it survived. Enough to make people nervous." Evelyn looked at him. "How nervous?" He shrugged slightly. "Enough that some people want it destroyed. Others want to finish what he started." Her jaw clenched. "He started a nightmare." Ross turned to face her fully. "Nightmares don't end when the dreamer dies, doctor. They end when someone stops believing in them." She didn't respond. There was nothing left to argue. He handed her a sealed envelope. "You want to see this?" She opened it carefully. Inside was a printed satellite photo taken 2 days ago. In the corner of the image, among the blackened remains of the complex, a faint heat signature glowed near what had once been the containment sector. Ross spoke quietly. "Could be residual radiation. Could be something else." Evelyn's fingers trembled. "He's dead." "That's what we thought the first time." Ross replied, then turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the wind. She looked down at the photograph, then at the valley again. Lightning flashed in the distance, just like the night it all ended. A single thought crossed her mind, a voice she couldn't silence. You can cage a man's body, but once he learns the truth, his soul will burn through walls. 3 months later, in a small coastal town 2,000 miles away, a man stepped into a gym before dawn. The old neon sign flickered. Harbor Street Boxing Club. Inside, the place smelled of sweat and liniment. Heavy bags hung like old soldiers, scarred and silent. The man moved with a quiet grace that came from years of control, every motion measured. He wore a hoodie, gloves, and a faint scar along his neck. He began to hit the bag, slowly at first, then faster, until the dull thuds became rhythmic, alive. His breathing steadied. The pain in his ribs flared and faded with every strike. A boy at the door stopped to watch. "Mister," he said softly, "you fight like you've been doing it forever." The man paused, turning toward him. His eyes, deep calm, unbroken, met the boy's. "I used to," he said, simply. The boy tilted his head. "You gonna fight again?" "No," the man replied. "I'm done fighting." He gave the bag one last jab. "Now, I just teach." The boy smiled. "What's your name?" The man hesitated, then said Daniel. It wasn't true, but it was close enough to the man he'd decided to become. Back in the city, Evelyn Hart sat before a tribunal. The room was sterile and bright, filled with quiet power, the kind that didn't shout, only erased. A senator leaned forward. "Dr. Hart, you're asking for full transparency. You want these files made public, these programs exposed. Do you understand what that means for national security?" Evelyn didn't flinch. "It means accountability. It means people stop being property." Another official interjected. "You worked under Venn for years. You share the blame." "I do," she said, voice steady, "and I'll live with that. But hiding it won't change what we built or what it cost." The senator studied her. "Do you really think one report can change how this world works?" Evelyn met his eyes. "No," she said, "but maybe it can change who it breaks next." Silence hung like a held breath. When she left the chamber, she walked past a news monitor showing coverage of a new, underground fighting league spreading across the country. The camera caught a shadowed figure in the ring, fast, precise, devastating. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw him. the way he moved, the way his shoulders carried that same disciplined weight. But then the image flickered and cut to static. She stood there a long moment before whispering to herself, "You can't kill a spirit built to survive." That night, she sat at her desk overlooking the city. The flash drive lay beside her keyboard, its casing warped from heat. She opened the recovered file one last time, audio logs from the Asterian archives. Darius's voice filled the room. Calm, steady, resolute. "If anyone hears this, understand, power without conscience isn't strength, it's infection. You can train a man to fight, but if you strip him of his choice, he's no longer a man. He's a weapon, and weapons don't heal." His words echoed through the dim room, every syllable like a weight pressing on her chest. She reached for the stop button, but couldn't bring herself to touch it. He continued, "I spent years breaking people in cages. I told myself I was surviving. But maybe survival isn't winning. Maybe it's remembering what it means to stop fighting and start feeling again." Her eyes burned. "You did remember," she whispered, "even if it killed you." She closed the file, and for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline. She turned toward the window, and for a fleeting instant she imagined she saw a figure standing across the street, hooded, still, watching. Then it was gone, swallowed by rain and shadow. Evelyn smiled faintly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Rest, Darius," she said softly. "You've earned it." But far away, in a dimly lit gym by the sea, a man named Daniel wiped sweat from his hands and looked out at the horizon. The dawn light spilled through the windows, painting the floor gold. He stood quietly, breathing in the salt air, the ache in his body reminding him he was still alive. He didn't need redemption anymore. He just needed purpose. As the boy from before returned with gloves and a grin, Darius Cole, alive but changed, nodded once and began to teach him how to stand, how to move, how to protect himself without losing control. Fighting, he said, his voice quiet but certain, isn't about power. It's about knowing when not to use it. Outside, the ocean roared like applause. And for the first time, the man who had survived death, deceit, and his own darkness finally felt human again. "So, tell me, if you were in his shoes, mocked and underestimated, would you have revealed your success or walked away in silence?" Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that flip the script on arrogance.